Hello everyone, Brad Johnson here, and welcome to the next episode of Downloads from Sirius, Adronis Conscious Matrix Communication. So, I encourage you to go ahead and check out the previous 3 episodes in case you haven't seen the new format relating to Adronis, as he is coming through Conscious Matrix Communication. This is not channeling, this is Conscious Matrix Communication. This is basically like having, again, 2 minds contained into one. So again, more explained with that in the earlier episodes. But again, if you followed those episodes, welcome to episode number 4 of Downloads from Sirius. And basically what's going to be talked about today are 2 particular topics. One representing that of repopulation, and the second representing that of the dark side of the moon, and of course the moon itself. So Adronis is going to come through and provide insight pertaining to these 2 topics. So we'll go ahead and we'll get started. Enjoy, here we go. We are here at this time, and we bid you greetings, and thank you very much for the opportunity of this interaction today. I am Adronis from Sirius, sending love, appreciation, and gratitude to all who are tuning in to this particular broadcast being brought forward through your internet collective consciousness. We have been asked to share our insight relating to the particular 2 topics today, representing that of what you would know as repopulation, also representing that of the moon and the dark side of the moon, whichever you prefer to call it is fine. First of all, the whole idea in regards to your understanding of repopulation does not constitute any particular degree of a cataclysm or a catastrophe or any sort of particular doom and gloom situation. The whole idea of repopulation is that your whole planet is basically going through a whole new higher filtration of vibration. That throughout your post-atomic era, since that time, the effects relating to the ground crew, the beings that are incarnating upon your plane right now, are these particular trailblazers, are these pioneers that have allowed themselves to come onto Earth, some very much for the very first time, and attempt to internally transform your whole understanding of how you govern yourselves, of how you allow yourselves to follow more of self-empowerment, of how you begin to start taking care of your planet, taking care of yourselves, taking care of each other. This simply indicates the idea of the repopulation protocol. So again, this has been happening since your post-atomic era. Basically what's happening is as your planet is going through higher octave shifts of dimension, that your own grids, that your own energetics, that your own electromagnetic energies that are prolific around your planet are integrating themselves into a much more higher form of frequency. So what this indicates is that many of you who are following your own self-path, your own self-empowerment, who are understanding more of your own divine potentials, are literally coasting along with the wave pertaining to Mother Earth. Mother Earth is shifting, she is transforming, she is reaching new ground, she is transcending herself into a higher degree of consciousness. Basically what's happening is that many of you are going along for the ride. Now understand that the repopulation protocol is not for everybody. Not everybody is going to be successfully repopulated upon your planet. Now again, this is not meant in any particular form of doom and gloom scenario. But basically what's happening is that every single new child that is coming upon your planet is a fresh spirit, is a fresh entity that is now coming upon your plane and has particular tasks, particular agendas, particular forms of circumstantial, transformative endeavors that they are going to embark upon within their times ahead. These particular new children, based upon the newest, freshest souls that are coming upon your planet, are uncorruptible. They are incapable of being corrupted. Basically what that means is that they will always work more towards what is natural. They will always be in favor of the earth. they will always be in favor of the unification principle for all of you, rather than feeling that they need to corrupt themselves to, shall we say, put together the illusion of money ahead of any other person or themselves, or what they feel is ethical, or what they feel is appropriate to allowing your own planet to transform. These particular new souls have been screened immensely. The screening process is not through the idea of feeling that there are, shall we say, other beings that are interviewing other beings, and that those other beings are coming upon your planet. That's not really what's being said here. The whole idea is that your own planet has a particular frequency, a particular vibration, a particular sound, as it were, pertaining to many of these new souls who are able to literally match the frequency of that particular sound frequency, for example, to literally be able to have their presence here on this planet, to incarnate. What is happening with many of you as you are going through an amalgamation effect is that you are beginning to transform. Your own tones, to that degree, are now starting to transform in their own way to match the harmonic, to match in sync with the tones of the earth that are harmonious, to the elevation effect of where you're moving into sub-densities, into sub-octaves. That's basically what's happening. The repopulation protocol relies upon the idea of what we have termed as energetic tech support. That many of these particular beings are working with a great deal of you to help tweak your energy fields, to help tweak your thought patterns, to help tweak many certain forms of circumstantial scenarios that you have been, shall we say, embarking upon throughout lifetimes, in order now for many of these opportunities that are coming together for those who are the most mindful, for those who are the most aware, to finally create resolution for a feedback loop that has been going on lifetime after lifetime. So this is why this life is, in that sense, a great deal pertaining to a resolution, a closure pertaining to a enormous amount of, shall we say, transformations that are now starting to take place. That the old feedback loops are now starting to cancel themselves out, and that you are now starting to elevate yourselves. You are bringing yourself more to the true consciousness of where you're meant to be. And therefore, such people that are aligned in that way will allow themselves to transcend with the new earth. The new earth simply is that particular type of buzzword that we're utilizing. It really isn't a new earth, but it in that sense is transforming into a whole new collective frequency. And so what's happening is that you're matching these particular forms of frequencies that the earth is creating, that you're aligning to, that you're magnetizing to, together as a collective. And as we stated, not everybody is going to be able to make this shift. Not everybody is going to be able to sit down on the grand vibratory piano and play the same song that Mother Earth is playing as she reaches higher plateaus of dimensionality. That's not all of your tasks. That's not for all of you to meet. And that's all right. Those who cannot meet the repopulation protocol will conclude in this life in any shape, way, form that is appropriate for their measure to conclude with. And upon that time of their own conclusion, they will go somewhere else. Will they incarnate upon Earth again? That all depends. That all depends in regards to how much healing work can be done upon them for them to realize that they are in the subtle synchronous vibration necessary to once again come upon planet Earth. Some will not be able to. Some will literally go into these different pockets of astral realms. Some will actually go into these different pockets of spiritual communities that actually exist in different dimensions parallel to your Earth, that are often healing centers. Now you have many different healing centers and spiritual cities contained upon the planet. There are particular forms of cities within your region of Australia, within your own Himalayan mountains, within the Rocky Mountains of Colorado, within Mount Shasta, within Teotihuacan, within Poland, within certain areas of Asia, such as, shall we say, Eastern China, particular areas of Korea, Polynesia. It really goes on and on. There are a wide majority, even ones that we're not even really aware of, shall we say, that operate on different bands that are covering your planet. There are also these particular vaults, these pockets of astral domains that exist within the subterrane of your own planet. This is where many of you in that sense have gotten the idea that hell is some type of subterranean cataclysmic form of pit that you're cast into like an inner earth. Here's the key. Many of these particular lower vibratory, shall we say, realms exist within the internal crusts of your planet, simply because that is where much of them will require occupation in regards to their presence because of the lack of light that's there. So even though there are subterranes of other dimensional beings that exist within the vaults of your planet, there are also other astral-based pocketed cities that are contained within the internal crusts in your planet that may almost feel like a purgatory or like a hellish-based dimension. Now again, no one really is, in that sense, attempting to place you there through their own will. You're a frequency, you're a sound, you're light, you're vibration. Here is the frequency of the domain. Here is yourself. When you sync, you come together. Nobody is putting you in those particular places. There is no external being of saying, well, you're going to go to one of these hellish dimensions. You're going to go to this purgatory. No. That's all up to you. That's all up to the individual to decide exactly where they feel they belong. No one is ever going to put you there. But there are certain forms of astral pocketed domains where many of these beings who may feel that they have somewhat of a cluttered soul, who may have a lot of dilution, similarly to how you would add oil to water, that have these particular forms of dilutions, that have the opportunity to go to many of these spiritual centers, these spiritual kingdoms in astral realms, to actually be repaired, to actually have restoration brought forward. This is simply the idea that much of karmic opportunities of rebalancing are available. But again, it's all self-work. There are many different beings of very loving nature that are willing to assist, but they cannot do the work for you. So even for those particular beings that pass this plane, who have, shall we say, still collected a great deal of collective karma upon themselves, are able to go to these pockets to allow some type of repopulation protocol cleansing to take place. If they are truly in the harmony of matching the frequency of the earth, they can come back around for another pass, and they can then incarnate again. But if you were to compare it to a newborn baby who is very fresh to spirit, they are basically automatically entered because they are fresh from source, and that they have no problem whatsoever interlocking with the frequency of the earth to, shall we say, participate and volunteer with this experiment. Other particular beings that may have been very corrupted, that have utilized in manipulation others pertaining to how they have felt life needs to be, in regards to all the dilution that they have, will have a much more challenging time in coming back to earth another time around if they're unable to interlock with the frequency of what earth is currently aligned to in regards to higher dimensionality. So these particular beings simply will not be able to incarnate again. It's not that anybody externally is forcing them out, it's that they simply do not match and interlock relating to the frequency that is appropriate for the vibration of earth in order for them to reach a further state of transcendence with this particular grand university known as earth. They will have to go somewhere else. Sometimes that may require incarnating on another planet that is somewhat compatible with their frequencies. Sometimes it may just literally be staying within certain forms of astral realms to attempt certain forms of improvement on that level. However they wish to pursue it, that's fine. But this is the repopulation protocol principle, that What is happening upon your earth right now? For many of the fresh souls that are coming upon your earth are part of the next wave of generations. Within your next 3 generations, you will be experiencing a completely different earth. It will be unlike any type of earth you have ever seen before. Much of your own countries will no longer be countries. You will literally be able to erase many of the borders across your planet. You will be able to become a lot more ecologically sound. Technology will work more in the idea of functioning as a prop, as functioning as a tool, and not feeling that it needs to dominate your society. This will be taken care of. This will be addressed in your years ahead. It may feel that, well, there's a little bit of tension here and there, all of this technology, all of this feeling that we're neglecting our planet, etc., etc. You're only being told that you're neglecting your planet. Believe us when we say that there's a lot more of you that are tuning in and are becoming aware of what you're doing to your planet, and many more of you, shall we say, are actually working to transform this around, rather than feeling that many of you are, in that sense, feeling that you're still sitting on your butts. You're not. Many of you are actually taking action. We see this. The media will not tell you this. Many other particular beings that represent that old paradigm will not tell you this. But believe us when we say that Earth herself and her children are now starting to come together a lot more strongly than they ever have, because Earth has never had a population explosion like she has had now. So this truly is a monumental time. This is all part of repopulation. Repopulation is simply bringing you closer and closer together to functioning as a unified based collective. That's its purpose. That's why it's here. That's why you're all here on this planet, to get along with each other, to get to know yourself, to get to know others, and to take care of your world. That's why you're here. That's a 4th density principle. And this is exactly what repopulation represents. It is an ongoing form of principle, an ongoing form of structure. But this is what's taking effect right now as the new children are starting to, shall we say, encapsulate themselves within the body. Many of them just pure essence coming upon your planet and experiencing physicality for the first time ever. Other elemental beings existing in different dimensions, now deciding to say, I'm going to skip out of being an elemental, of being one with nature, of feeling that immortal, eternal life, and now I'm going to contribute as well. Believe us when we say that every corner of the universe, in that form of example, has heard the call for what Earth requires. And all types of beings, all types of consciousness, all types of essence are here and taking care of what they have volunteered to work with. And you're all doing very well. You're exactly where you need to be, whether you're on a spiritual path or not. You're exactly where you need to be. It's all part of the repopulation protocol. Thank you very much. We shall now address the idea of your moon, about the dark side of the moon. What's it all about? What's happening? Why is the moon here? What does the moon have to do with much of our, shall we say, quarantine? Or what is happening upon the moon? Who's there? Etc., etc. The whole idea pertaining to your moon is that it is a multi-civilization based monitoring station. It's a satellite. It's a spacecraft. It is older than your planet. It is not originally from your own star system. It has been brought here. It was brought here in that sense, as it has been part of many other different forms of planetary, shall we say, missions, and that Earth was simply another part of its mission. It occupies many different types of beings. There is not just 1 or 2 particular beings that are contained upon the moon. There are many. We cannot really give you an exact number because, again, some of these particular beings really do not want to be identified at this time. However, what is happening in regards to the function of the moon is that it is a catalyst pertaining to your own quarantine, pertaining to, shall we say, certain waves, certain frequencies that are being emitted to literally create a type of restraining bolt. Now again, this is not meant to, in that sense, be at the point dubious to you, feeling that we are betraying you or that there is information being withheld. But again, basically what's happening is that much of the frequencies that are being produced by much of the technology that exists on the dark side of the moon are basically helping to create this veil together on your planet. Simply because without the moon, all of you would literally be functioning as manifestation gods. You would literally have all the capability necessary to function as, in that sense, instantaneous manifestors. You would literally be able to function as godlike beings. But again, that would not be very, very valuable based upon people who are still attempting to learn how to work together. With so much duality upon your planet, this is why certain frequencies that are being emitted through your moon, and of course other particular planets contained within your star system, it's not just primarily the moon that's responsible, but it's also other particular planets within your own star system. But this is necessary to maintain the experiment of what's happening on planet Earth, that there are certain forms of restrictions of, shall we say, psychic bombardments that are produced as frequency from many of the different technologies placed upon this moon that is of Sirian origin, that is actually, in that sense, broadcasting itself upon your world. This is all part of the plan. We know some of you may even be upset about this, saying, how could you do this? Why are you suppressing many of our abilities? We're not suppressing many of your abilities. The whole idea is that we are working in tandem of the collective consciousness to tune these particular frequencies as appropriate so that you are receiving bits at a time. It's very, very similar to the example that if you had a child that instantly could kill people with a thought or feel that they could manifest certain things and create chaos with their particular thoughts over anybody else, then you most certainly would have a disastrous situation here. Basically what's happening is that the moon and all other beings that are working together in the alliances to help humanity transcend are primarily focusing on helping yourselves. As you begin to help more of yourselves, when that time comes, your moon will no longer even be here. It doesn't need to be here. It's only here because it requires this point of restraint. Because you human beings are attempting to overcome a state of heavy duality that has been around your surface for thousands and thousands of years. So the moon represents this particular catalyst. It functions as this frequency barrier to limit certain degrees of expanded states of consciousness in the point of where it is allowing as a barometer to raise as the consciousness raises once love has been acclaimed upon the planet. Do not feel that you're the only planet that has this upon your surface. It's just a little bit more of an extreme because it's about civilizations coming together and unifying together in love. Now, there are some of you who have actually been able to bypass the frequencies that are being emitted upon the moon. Simply because you are becoming more powerful, you are allowing many of your abilities to become unlocked. And believe us when we say that the energies that are contained upon the moon are nowhere near as strong as they once were in your decades past. They have been significantly reduced. This is why we have said on December 21st, 2012, that much of this quarantine veil is going to be dropped, and a lot of it has. But there still is certain forms of integrities that need to be held together. They are, shall we say, much more of the skim-based state of the surface. A veil that is a little bit more thinner, but nowhere near as thick as it once was. December 21st, 2012 represented a significant decrease in the dropping of this veil. And so many other planets, again, are acting as shells. So the quarantine itself functions as an inner shell, and then an outer shell, and a secondary outer shell, a third outer shell, etc. that constitutes the gravitational constructs in vibrational alignments and particular forms of phase states relating to all other planets that are part of your star system. Now again, we realize that this is a lot to take in because basically what we're talking about here is the function of the moon. It is true that there is a particular, shall we say, filter placed upon the moon. There have been other particular, shall we say, individuals upon your planet that have talked about, shall we say, a soul harvester or a filter of souls. The whole idea is that this is not, shall we say, imprisoning souls. This is not keeping any particular soul in a purgatory. That's not what's being said here. This gigantic resonator, this filter, is a crystalline artificial intelligence. Basically what's happening is that this filter is what's helping, in that sense, to maintain a particular filter between the moon and your own planet for certain forms of incarnate beings to actually incarnate that matches a particular filter of a higher frequency. Now, many of the beings, you have beings from Orion, you have beings from Sirius, you have beings from Lyra, you have beings from the Pleiades, you have beings from Zeta Reticuli, you have beings from Betelgeuse, you have beings from Procyon, you have beings from Altair, you have beings from many different clusters of stars and other dimensions and other galaxies that are actually stationed upon the moon, working together in monitoring observational capacity to measure the states of the collective consciousness, to therefore reduce in gradual measure the idea of many of these frequencies that are preventing yourselves from, that sense, expanding yourselves further. That's basically what's happening. And again, understand that many of these tones do not even affect quite a few of you. Quite a few of you are even immune to the filtration and the functioning of these tones that the moon itself is producing. This is all part of collective agreement. You may say, well, who was it that put this together? All of you. All of you decided that as a collective consciousness, this is what was necessary in order for you to work with yourselves before you're able to work with profound psychic ability. So that is to come. That is to take care of itself. But again, it's very much similar to how children themselves are learning the educational properties necessary to get along with themselves and to get along with each other before they can then allow these abilities to surface further. As you take care of yourself, as you take care of each other, as you take care of your planet, more of these abilities will naturally gravitate towards you beyond the frequency restriction bolts that represent the moon. But again, this particular soul filter, in that sense, is part of the filtration frequency necessary. It is a vibratory shield. That's basically what's being produced through the dark side of the moon. Is that this particular crystalline structure is feedbacking off the energy grids, the ley lines of the planet, and actually creating a torus shape between your planet and the moon. And this is basically what's creating a particular, shall we say, vibratory, fractal-based structure that is maintaining this grid for particular souls to incarnate at this time. So you see how repopulation and the understanding of your moon intermix. There's a great deal about the moon that we could tell you a lot more about. But again, there isn't a lot of time here. The whole idea is that much of the internal structure of the moon is much more synthesized. It is a synthetic, shall we say, construct internally, containing a great deal of cities, containing a great deal of, shall we say, internal observers, and that they basically tunnel through different craters and they exist more so inside the moon. And that many of these technologies are contained in the dark side of the moon. Why is that? Because your moon does not rotate and it is well hidden from your human sight. Satellites that have attempted to, in that sense, take many different photographs of the moon. Some have been able to share certain forms of, shall we say, pictures in certain ways, but most of them have been sanitized in regards to agreements between your government and other races. We ourselves are not really involved with that, but again, it was something between other races and your own governments. We ourselves are not occupying the moon. We ourselves, as beings from Sirius A, are contained within our own Sirius A star. Much of the technology that exists upon your moon emerged from Sirius B. So much of the Sirius B technologies are contained upon the moon. You also have Pleiadian technologies. You also have Orion technologies. You have many different technologies that are intermingling upon the moon. And there is an alliance taking place. So again, here's what we'll say in conclusion. That many different beings, if you were to measure a rainbow spectrum, where you have the highest violet that represents the beings that are very connotative and assisting to you, that are working in your favor, and you have the lowest side of the spectrum that is a void, to where beings want nothing to do with you, they simply want to claim the planet. Many of these particular beings have all signed a particular treaty. They have signed a truce, and many of them are observing upon the moon, as well as through the ring of armadas of different ships that are all around your planet, that contain thousands of different races of beings. They're all here because they have associations with certain degrees of you. That's why they're here. But many of them are simply observing to find out where humanity is going. Understand that many of them have already left because they already realize that there's no chance that they're actually going to have an opportunity to claim Earth for themselves, to feel that humanity will exterminate themselves. So many of them are leaving. There are those in that sense who decide to stay because they want to see what's exactly happening here until the point of breach. The point of breach is something else we're going to describe in a future episode, as it is something completely different. This is what will determine, shall we say, the point of first contact. But basically what's happening is all of these particular beings are observing your planet, and that through the connotation of how you're all advancing will determine the alignments of how many of these beings that are very much in your favor will interact with you in the future. But again, you're the ones that will be calling these particular beings down to assist you. So again, many of these beings all have a truce. Many of these beings really do not even, in that sense, respect each other to the point. There are other beings in that sense that actually do have serious problems with other beings across Earth. But because this is neutral territory, because this functions with a truce, and because they are all work together in agreement, there can be no form of, shall we say, disruption or conflict preventing the ownership of this planet. That's why there have been, shall we say, no interstellar wars between your planets. This is simply a neutralized point of space. So again, this is another little caveat that we're throwing your way. That other particular skirmishes that you have noticed in the past has been between your own Earth governments and other races.